When I first booked the massage, it was supposed to be a surprise for my husband and a little treat for myself too. We'd both been so stressed lately, work, bills, and just life pulling us in different directions. So when our neighbor Amanda mentioned this private therapist who made house calls and had amazing reviews, I didn't think twice. His name was Eric, and she swore he was professional, calming, and extremely good at what he did. "You'll feel like a new person," she'd said with a smile. I laughed it off, not knowing those words would echo in my head days later, but not in the way she meant. From the moment Eric walked through our door, something felt off. He was polite, charming even, but there was this weird energy, like he was watching everything too closely. My husband, Nate, greeted him casually and then went back to his laptop in the other room. I didn't think much of it. I lay down on the massage table, dim lights around me, soft music playing in the background. Everything seemed normal at first, his hands were steady, his voice was calm. But about 10 minutes in, things shifted. He started asking questions that felt too personal. "How's your relationship with your husband?" he asked, almost in a whisper. I chuckled nervously and said, "Fine, why?" He didn't respond, just continued the massage with an eerie silence. That's when I started feeling the unease creep up my spine. Something in his tone, the way he paused before touching certain areas, it wasn't what I expected from a professional. But it wasn't just that. It was the way he looked at me. At one point, he leaned in close and our eyes met, and it wasn't accidental. He held that gaze a second too long. There was no kindness in it, no warmth. Just something cold and unsettling. That look told me something wasn't right. My instincts screamed at me, but I stayed quiet, frozen on that table, trying to act like I didn't notice. I told myself I was overthinking it. That maybe I was imagining things. After the session, I mentioned to Nate that the massage felt different than I expected, but he barely looked up from his screen. "Probably just your nerves," he said. So I let it go, until I found out Eric had been to our house before. When I wasn't home. And Nate never told me. That's when the questions really started. Why would my husband need a massage when I wasn't there? Why hide it? What was really going on between them? And why did Eric seem to know so much about me, things I never said out loud? It was just a massage, or at least, that's what I thought. But after that look, after that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to change. And I was right. What happened next? I never saw coming. After that strange encounter, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The look in Eric's eyes haunted me for days. It wasn't just discomfort, it felt like a warning, like he knew something I didn't. I kept trying to convince myself it was all in my head, maybe just stress messing with my judgment. But when small things started adding up, I realized I couldn't ignore it anymore. A few days later, I casually brought up Eric to Amanda, the neighbor who originally recommended him. I asked her how long she'd known him and if he usually did house visits alone. Her smile faltered for a second, just a flicker, but I caught it. She said, "Oh, I haven't seen him in months. I thought he moved to another area." That answer didn't make sense. Why would she recommend someone she hadn't seen in a long time? And why did she seem uncomfortable all of a sudden? I went home feeling more confused than ever. That night, as Nate slept beside me, I couldn't help but scroll through his phone. I didn't want to, I really didn't, but something inside me needed answers. I didn't find anything direct, no messages to or from Eric. But what I did find was a recent call log with a number saved under a fake name, Gary from work. Nate doesn't even have a coworker named Gary. And that same number had texted him just a few days before my massage appointment. My heart was racing, but I didn't say anything. I needed more. I started watching Nate's patterns more closely. He was suddenly extra nice, more affectionate, like he was trying to make up for something. And whenever I asked questions, small, innocent ones, he'd brush them off or change the subject. I decided to call that number. I didn't say anything when it connected, I just listened. A man picked up, and his voice, it was Eric. I recognized it instantly. My stomach dropped. Why was Eric calling my husband? Why was my husband lying about it? Now, every memory of that massage felt different. Every word, every glance, every moment was laced with meaning I hadn't seen at the time. I had stumbled into something deeper than I imagined. I didn't have the full picture yet, but I knew something was seriously wrong. And I wasn't going to stop until I found out what. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept circling the same questions. Why was Eric calling Nate? Why would my husband lie about it? And more than anything, what exactly had I missed happening right under my nose? The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about a strange massage session anymore. It was about trust, and the quiet cracks that had been forming in my marriage for months without me noticing. Over the next few days, I pretended everything was normal. I smiled, cooked dinner, laughed at Nate's jokes. But inside, I was watching everything. His phone barely left his side now, even when he was just going to the bathroom. He kept the screen face down, something he never used to do. And when I mentioned Amanda again, just to test his reaction, he tensed up, barely noticeable, but I caught it. One evening, I visited Amanda unexpectedly. I wanted to talk face to face, no warning. She opened the door, surprised to see me, and her eyes flicked nervously toward the living room like someone might be there. But the house was quiet. I kept things light at first, chatting casually, pretending I just needed some girl time. But when I finally brought up Eric again, her entire mood changed. She leaned in and said, almost in a whisper, "Look, I shouldn't have said anything about him. Just, be careful, okay?" Her words chilled me. Why be careful of a massage therapist? What was she not telling me? The conflict kept twisting tighter. I found an old receipt tucked inside Nate's car, one from a coffee shop downtown. It was dated a week before my massage, during a time Nate told me he was working late. But what made my hands tremble was the signature scribbled on the tip line. It wasn't his. It looked like Eric's handwriting, something I had seen on his business card. Were they meeting up? Why? That night, I finally asked Nate directly. I didn't accuse, just asked, "Have you seen Eric before the massage?" He paused, just for a split second, then smiled and said no. That pause told me everything. Now, I wasn't just wondering if something was wrong. I knew it. But I had no idea just how deep it would go, or who else might be involved. The next morning, I couldn't take the silence anymore. Every time Nate smiled, every time he kissed me on the forehead, it felt like a lie pressing harder on my chest. I had questions, and I needed real answers, not more excuses. I decided to dig deeper, this time with purpose. I went through our shared tablet, the one Nate rarely used but had synced once with his cloud account. What I found made my stomach turn. There were deleted photos, screenshots, to be exact. Most were gone, but one had been backed up by mistake. It was a cropped image of a conversation. The name Eric was blurred out, but the messages were clear. One of them read, "She's getting suspicious. We need to be more careful." My breath caught in my throat. Suspicious of what? And we? What were they hiding together? I stared at that message until my hands started to shake. This wasn't just paranoia. This was real. And the worst part? Nate was clearly involved. Still, I didn't know how deep it went or how long it had been going on. I needed more than hints and half-truths. So I followed him. That evening, when he said he was going out to pick up groceries, I waited 5 minutes and then grabbed my keys. He wasn't headed to the store. Instead, he drove across town to a quiet neighborhood I didn't recognize. I parked down the street and watched from a distance. He walked up to a small apartment and knocked. My heart raced as the door opened. It was Eric. Nate walked inside without hesitation, like he'd done it 100 times before. I couldn't breathe. I sat there frozen in my car, hands clutching the steering wheel, watching the door like it might suddenly open and reveal the truth. I waited for 20 minutes, then 30. Still no sign of either of them. That's when I got out. I walked toward the building slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. My head was spinning. Was this a secret friendship? Something more? Was Amanda somehow connected to this too? Everything felt twisted now, like the life I thought I knew had shifted into something unfamiliar. I reached the door. My hand hovered above the handle. I could hear voices inside, low, muffled, but urgent. I took a deep breath, ready to find out what was really going on. Then the door opened. The door didn't open slowly, it swung open fast, almost like someone was expecting to storm out. I stepped back instinctively, heart pounding, eyes wide. But it wasn't Nate who stood in the doorway. It was Amanda. Her eyes locked onto mine, both of us frozen in disbelief. Neither of us spoke for a second. I was too stunned to even form words. She looked different, tired, makeup smudged, hair in a messy bun. Like she hadn't slept in days. Behind her, I could see shadows move, voices still murmuring low. Amanda stepped out and closed the door halfway behind her, blocking the view. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice cracking. She glanced back nervously and whispered, "You shouldn't be here." "No, Amanda. You shouldn't be here," I snapped, all the emotion finally boiling over. "What is going on? Why is Nate here? Why is Eric here? And why are you?" I couldn't even finish the sentence. None of it made sense, and the more I tried to put it together, the more impossible it felt. Amanda sighed, like she was carrying a weight she could barely hold. "It's not what you think. I wanted to tell you. I almost did so many times. But it got complicated. Nate wasn't supposed to." She stopped herself. "You need to go home. Please." I shook my head. "No. Not until I know what's going on." The door behind her creaked open just a bit more, and Nate stepped into view, his face pale. "Babe. I can explain." "You better," I said, my chest tightening with each breath. But then something shifted in the hallway. Another voice called from inside, one I didn't recognize. A woman. Her tone was angry, sharp. "Why is she here? I told you this wasn't part of the plan." "Plan?" My stomach dropped. Amanda turned, trying to hush whoever it was, but it was too late. The door flung open wider, and a woman I'd never seen before appeared. She was in her early 40s, sharp features, dressed like she'd just come from work. She stared at me with a coldness that sent chills down my spine. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. "You've messed everything up." I looked at Nate. He said nothing. He just looked, trapped. And that's when I realized, this wasn't about an affair anymore. This wasn't just infidelity or secrets between friends. It was bigger than that. Nate wasn't just hiding a relationship. He was caught in something deeper. Something planned. And I had walked straight into the center of it. I stepped back, heart racing, questions flooding in faster than I could process them. Why was Amanda involved? Who was this other woman? And what exactly had Nate gotten himself into? I didn't know what the truth was yet. But I knew this, I was no longer just suspicious. I was in danger of discovering something far more twisted than I ever imagined. I stood frozen in that hallway, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. Nate wouldn't meet my eyes, and Amanda kept fidgeting like she was about to break. The other woman, the one I'd never seen before, stepped closer. "You were never supposed to know about this," she said sharply. "Not like this." "Know what?" I finally shouted, unable to hold back any longer. "What is going on? What are all of you hiding from me?" Nate finally looked up. His face was pale and tired, like the weight of everything was pressing down on him all at once. "It started as something small," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "A stupid idea. We were struggling financially. Amanda knew someone who was helping people, discreetly. People with good insurance and no clue how the system works." I stared at him, not understanding. "What does that even mean?" "Insurance fraud," the other woman said flatly. "Therapy sessions that never happened. Massages billed under false medical codes. Just a signature here, a file there. Easy money." My head spun. "So you've been scamming people?" Nate stepped forward. "We thought it was harmless." Eric was the front. He'd show up, do a half session, or just take photos for records. It was just paperwork. But then it grew. More names, more files. "Your name got added too." I gasped. "You used me?" Amanda finally spoke. "That massage? It wasn't for your health. It was for the records." He looked at you like that because he didn't want to go through with it. He didn't even know you were you. He thought you were a random claim. I felt sick. Why not just tell me? Why all the lies? "Because we didn't know how deep it was until it was too late," Nate said. "That woman, her name's Valerie, she runs it all. She said if we pulled out, she'd take us down with her." Valerie's eyes narrowed. "I still might." The room fell into silence. I had the truth now, but it didn't make anything better. The betrayal stung deeper than anything else. It wasn't just infidelity. It was fraud. Lies. Using my name, my trust, as a tool. Then, just as I turned to leave, Valerie's phone rang. She looked at the screen, her face going white. "They know," she whispered. Amanda's eyes widened. "Who?" Valerie looked up. "The authorities. Someone tipped them off." I glanced back at Nate. And that's when I knew. He wasn't just confessing because he got caught. He'd turned them in. To protect me. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was love. Or maybe it was just survival. Police sirens echoed in the distance. The story was ending. But not how anyone expected. The sirens got louder, flashing lights beginning to reflect off the nearby windows. Amanda looked like she might faint. Valerie stood frozen, lips tight, calculating her next move. But Nate, he just exhaled and stepped away from the door like a man who had been holding his breath for too long. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He looked right at me. "I did it," he said. "I told them everything. I couldn't keep living like this, lying to you, lying to myself." A few minutes later, officers approached the building. The tension in the hallway finally snapped as Valerie tried to walk away, but it was too late. She was arrested right there, in front of us. Amanda didn't resist either. She just looked at me with watery eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. At the station, I gave my statement. They asked about the massage, the insurance records, my connection to Eric, and everything I'd learned. It felt surreal answering questions about my own name being used in a fraud scheme I had no idea I was part of. I was cleared, of course. But the betrayal didn't disappear with the truth. It stayed. Nate was charged but made a deal. Since he had tipped them off and cooperated fully, the court showed some leniency. He was sentenced to community service, a fine, and mandatory counseling. Amanda and Valerie faced harsher consequences, especially Valerie, who had been running multiple scams across the city using massage therapy, fake medical records, and stolen identities. Eric? He vanished. Apparently, he'd been working under a fake license and disappeared the night the arrests happened. Last I heard, they were still looking for him. Back at home, everything felt different. Quiet. Hollow. Nate stayed with his brother for a while. I needed time. I needed space. We talked a few times after that, and I could tell he was trying, really trying to make things right. But some damage runs too deep to simply fix. Eventually, I decided to start fresh. I left the city, found a new apartment, and began focusing on myself. I took time to heal, to breathe again without second-guessing every glance and word. I started journaling, even shared my story anonymously online, hoping it might help someone else trust their instincts before it's too late. Looking back, I realized the warning signs were always there. The sudden kindness, the hidden phone, the strange energy during that massage. Sometimes, when someone looks you in the eyes, your gut knows something's wrong long before your mind catches up. And that feeling? It's rarely wrong. This was more than just a story about infidelity. It was about deception, manipulation, and waking up to the truth when it hurts the most. And in the end, it was also about reclaiming my peace. Not every ending is neat. But this one? It was real. And that's enough. He looked me in the eyes while giving the massage, and that was the moment everything changed. 16.